Good morning. So a little more on coping with suffering. Now, when Jesus was here on earth, he gave us the basics of Christianity, and it's very important to get that foundation correct, because as Jesus said in John chapter 16, we're going to need to build on that foundation. Chapter 16 verse 12, I still have many things to say to you, but you're not able to bear them now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth. Consequently, in Hebrews chapter 6, the Apostle Paul encourages us to do this. Let us leave the elementary doctrine of Christ and go on to maturity. The Apostle Paul wants us to dig deeper, build on the good foundation that Jesus gave us. So, Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 8. Although he was a son, that's Jesus, he learned obedience through what he suffered. How? Surely Jesus was obedient before he suffered here on earth. There's some suggestion that it might have been a little bit easier for Jesus to be obedient in heaven. But when he came to earth, he didn't suffer illness, but he certainly suffered pain, horrendous pain, to the point of death. How did he cope with that? Verse 7, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. But there were other things that Jesus learned through suffering and trying to be obedient while suffering. Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 17. Jesus had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God. Verse 18. Because he himself has suffered when tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Jesus understands now exactly how difficult it is to stay loyal to God through suffering. So in chapter 4 and verse 15, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, obviously without sin. You'll notice there that Jesus was called a high priest, yet he was born of the tribe of Judah. So he had the right to be king, but he had no right to be a Levitical priest. How did he become a high priest? The Apostle Paul sends us back to Psalm 110. Psalm 110 and verse 4. And this is a prophecy concerning the Messiah. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. Now, I'll put references below to the story of Melchizedek. He lived at the time of Abraham. He was both a king and a priest. There's no record of his death, so he represents the everlasting life that Jesus has as high priest. Now, this order of priesthood was much higher than the Aaronic priesthood. So Jesus is a priest such as Melchizedek was. What does this mean for us? It means we've been saved. We no longer have to worry about dying, because everlasting life has been promised us. Jesus has made the appropriate sacrifice for us. Now, the Apostle Paul discusses the law of Moses in great detail and explains that the temple in Jerusalem was a little copy of heaven, that the Most Holy represented God's presence himself. So Jesus, as high priest forever, was able to go before God himself and present the value of his sacrifice. Jesus was not only the priest, he was also a perfect sacrifice. Now, this is most important. Chapter 4 and verse 16 of Hebrews. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Very much needed for us in these difficult days. You might like to read those chapters. Hebrews chapters 1 through 7 won't take you very long, and it's not very difficult, but it will give us all a foundation for being very strong Christians. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless you all.